Hello, welcome to Middle East Monitor Live. I'm Osman Butt. My guest today is Reem Edan. Reem is an Iraqi-American comedian, award-winning writer, and content creator known for her unique brand of Muslim ennial humor. She has performed at venues across the US, Europe, Japan, and the Middle East, and opened for comics like Arsenio Hall and Jay Leno. Reem is an alumni of NBC's late night writing workshop, was invited to attend a program MIT for influencers using their platform for social change, named one of Bustle's 5 Muslim women's comedians to get you through social distancing, and can be seen performing in Arabic on the stand-up sketch show on Middle East streaming giant Shahid VIP. Recently, Reem has worked as a synopsis writer and editor for Netflix and is a comedic voice of Tom and Jerry's Twitter page. Welcome, Reem, to Middle East Monitor Live.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So you grew up with Iraqi parents in the United States, but you also spent some years in the Middle East as well. And in light of the fact that obviously Iraq was in conflict with Iraq, United States was in conflict with Iraq. How did all of these experiences shape you as a person, and how it brought you and your decision to go to comedy, and how do you navigate these experiences? That's basically it.
Sure. I will just start at the top. So, so I was born, my siblings and I were born in the United States. Our parents are from Iraq, or Iraq is how I pronounce it, which is horrible, I know, but I learned the word from white people. And so that was the beginning of my inner conflict, if you will, about who I was and where I was from and which side of me I really identified with. And that really came to a culmination when I moved to the Middle East, moved to Bahrain in 2001, a week before 9/11. And we obviously didn't know what was happening at the time. But so when we moved there, suddenly I went from being someone who was too Arab in America to being someone who's too American in the Middle East. And then the following year, the Iraq-America war happened. So like at every level of my existence, I was conflicted. I didn't really know if I belonged anywhere, so a lot of my life has been kind of in the gray area between those cultures, or the brown area between those cultures. And really my only defense strategy for kids who would ask me very, very specific and pointed and aggressive questions on both sides, more in the Middle East, because that's where I was at the time. The only way I knew how to respond to those questions was with comedy and humor, because otherwise you would succumb to just the pressure and I don't want to say bullying, but just people's, kids are evil and they're ridiculed and stuff. So just at a young age, I had to reconcile my identity. And the only way I knew how was make a joke out of it, change the subject, make it funny, like disarm both sides. It later became my offense strategy too. And I moved back to the United States because now, 4 years later, I was like, it's a changed world. It's a completely changed country. Are they going to even accept me? Are they going to like me? So what I did was I made a point to be just the funny girl and sure, talk about who I was and my past experiences, but in a way that was palatable, and that really got people to start looking at things different ways and to at least give me a chance before judging me right off the bat.
Yeah, it must have been a very difficult time as well. I mean, I know that in communities, for example, in the UK, the sort of post 9/11 world was actually it was a very difficult time, because everything you did, if you're from a certain background, came under suspicion. And if you're a young person, especially if you're a kid, you don't really know what war is. You don't have the sort of, you don't even know how to express it. And suddenly you're dealing with something very scary. And it was quite a difficult time for people who were growing up and sort of learning about themselves in that world. So thinking about your experiences as an Iraqi Arab Muslim woman, American woman, how were you greeted in the comedy world? And have you noticed any kind of like changes since starting out in how people react to you, or things that have shifted?
Sure. So I started in comedy in 2016. So prior to that, I was working in marketing for movie studios. I worked at Disney, I worked at Paramount, in another studio. And in 2016, if you might recall, that was the year that Trump got elected. So I had really started that summer performing and whatnot. And to be honest, it was a perfect time for me because there weren't that many Muslim, especially female Muslim comics. And I just had something to talk about. I feel like a lot of times we struggle, whether you're a writer or some kind of creative, excuse me, you struggle with what to talk about, right? And because essentially it's an art form where you're sharing your opinion and you're digesting the world around you, and you have to have something to say. And sometimes I struggle with not having anything to say, but at that time I did, because, you know, Trump was possibly going to get into office. There was this talk of the Muslim ban later on. And so ironically enough, Trump really helped my comedy career, because when I started, that's all I had to talk about. In fact, I posted a video after or just a couple months before he got elected, and the video on YouTube was titled "I'm Muslim unless Trump gets elected." And the second he got elected, that video went viral. Like, it just, the keyword search went crazy. And it really helped me get spots. It's very difficult to start out in comedy, especially in LA, where it's a very saturated market. But, you know, with that video going viral, it opened a lot of doors. I actually came to perform in the UK because someone saw that video and loved it. But B, felt like I was it afforded me many more opportunities on shows, maybe because it was affirmative action and diversity hiring, which I'm very okay with. But, you know, it seemed like, fine, you might have like 6 very established comedians on the show, but there's one more amateur comedian who has something different to say, and it's very relevant and topical. So for better or for worse, I feel like that helped ignite my comedy career.
So I have to ask this then, as a comedian, are you, not as obviously a citizen of the US, but as a comedian, are you unhappy that Trump has left because now your material is gone, or are you happy that the ultimate comedian has left power?
Oh my gosh. You know, I have this discussion a lot because he really took half of my comedy set with him. I just had to ditch like 45 minutes of jokes because, you know, they were all Trump-esque in nature. And now I was like, oh, great, now I have to start writing for real. It's taken a lot more effort on my part, but you know, Trump might have been a crutch for a lot of us because he just wrote half the joke for us. He would provide us the premise, and then we would just, you know, provide punchlines or sketches off of that. So now that he's gone, my job is harder, but it's forcing me to dig deeper and then really start pulling back the layers of my identity and go further with it outside of him. So that's been
yes. And but you've also performed in places like the Middle East. You know, I've noted you've been in the UAE, Palestine, elsewhere, and obviously currently you're also, as I mentioned in the intro, you've got a show on Shahid VIP, which is you doing stand up in the Middle East in Arabic, which is quite impressive actually. So I'm sort of wondering now, how do you what were your experiences like doing performances in the Middle East? First of all, let's start there.
Sure. I had a wonderful time. I love performing in the Middle East. The comedy scene isn't quite developed there yet in certain places. In Dubai, it's the most developed. A friend of mine, Ali Sayed, he runs like Dubomedy, him and his wife, Mina. So they're in Dubomedy in Dubai. So they have shows and they bring people out. And in fact, I was part of the Dubai Comedy Festival in 2021. But other places have, a few performers here and there. Sometimes they get big names coming through. But other than that, they're starved for comedy. And so you come in and the audiences are ready for you. And it's usually a very exciting show. I also, when I moved away from Bahrain, it's 15 years ago, I didn't know I was moving. My parents told us we were going away for summer vacation back to the United States. And then we just never went back. So, going to these shows just gives me, it really has a direct connection to my heart, because I'm like, oh my God, I'm back, and in fact, when I did go back to Bahrain for the first time, it was under the guise of comedy. So it was a very full circle moment. A lot of my middle school friends came out to see me and it was pretty cool. But yeah, I love performing. The shows in Palestine were particularly amazing. I love the audiences there. They're very sophisticated. And most of my shows are in English, aside from the Shahid VIP thing, which was in Arabic, which, when they asked me to do it, they're like, can you do stand up in Arabic? I was like, yeah, I mean, it's possible. Do I do stand up in Arabic? No, but could I? Yes, I could. And so for that opportunity, I had to really work hard. While I was at the Dubai Comedy Festival, we would do the shows, a couple shows a night. And then I would sit down with my friend Ali and we would just go through my set and write new stuff to be put on TV in Arabic. So I had to prepare that in a week. Prepare 20, 25 minutes of brand new stand-up content in a language that I speak but don't do stand-up in. and then perform it without ever gone to an open mic. I didn't even know if these jokes are really funny outside of our conversation. I just had to like do it. So it was a very nerve-wracking experience for me, but luckily it worked out.
Okay, but that's quite interesting though, because I mean, because I think also maybe because you grew up partially in Bahrain, you did have enough fluency in Arabic, because obviously if you'd just grown up in the US, even if you spoke Arabic at home, maybe you would have had greater challenge doing that in Arabic.
Sure.
So with that in mind, what do Arabs find funny? Is it different from what Americans find funny?
Let's see. Well, first off, I had to let you know that at the beginning of my Arabic performance, I acknowledged my accent because I was like, I know I sound like I'm struggling here. I kind of sound, if anyone has seen that 70s show, there's the character Fez, the Hispanic character. That's what I sounded like, but in Arabic to everybody else. Everyone had like this beautiful fluency. And I was like, hey, what's up? I'm an Arab American. Okay. So what do Arabs like? Arabs like exactly what we like. I think what I've learned from less from Arab shows, more from shows outside of the United States, I've learned to kind of comment on the overall cultural, relatable elements. So, and this is a question I get asked a lot because I do perform internationally. And so the audiences are generally the same. Sometimes you have a little bit more conservative audiences, but that's usually like a Muslim specific show as opposed to an Arab show. But I like to comment more on, you know, my parents having those lost in translation moments or feeling stuck between cultures, or more broad strokes, cultural, behavioral elements, as opposed to sometimes in the United States, I'm very set up punchline, very topical. And the cultural elements don't translate as well as I do there. So I try to, like I said, tell more stories. I do more act outs, bigger characters, more voices, because I feel like that travels better outside of the US.
I was going to say, actually, one of the things you could have said is that because apparently Iraqis are very famous for doing this, where they will switch the dialect they speak and they're actively speaking depending on who they're speaking to. So if they meet an Egyptian, they have to sound Egyptian. And I'm just thinking maybe you could have just used that as an excuse. Well, I'm an Iraqi. I'm just doing this American accent to like try it out.
Great. I love that. And, you know, I'll tell you a quick story. My parents do that. I think it's code switching essentially. And whoever would come to our house or wherever they would go, they would switch to Egyptian or Lebanese or Palestinian. So when I was in Palestine, they asked us if we wanted to go on a national television talk show, like a morning talk show in Arabic. And again, they asked me like, do you speak Arabic? And I said, for television, I do. Let's go. So we went, and the issue was, and I brought this up later when it came to filming my Shahid show, I said, I need to speak 100% Iraqi. Like, see, I did it again, Iraqi. It has to be 100% in my dialect and in the way that I speak, in the words that I would normally use, so that, you know, if I forget what I'm saying on stage, I can just go back into that as opposed to try to remember the script. And the reason I say that is because when I went on that show, and I think that it was on the Palestinian, I was trying to speak Palestinian because I was convinced nobody was going to understand my Iraqi accent. So I was like, okay, so I was trying to like speak like traditional Arabic. And because I did that, I messed up words. And instead of, they asked me like, how were the shows here in Palestine? And I switched a word because I was trying too hard. And I was like, yeah, the jewelry here is great. And they're like, what? I said, what? The show, the audience here is great. I switched the word jumhur for mujoharat. And I've learned my lesson. I've learned, don't code switch, just speak how you speak and hope to God they understand you, because it's not worth it otherwise.
Yeah. And that's really interesting that you did perform in Palestine, because I can see like there's a comedy scene developing where we are seeing some comics go out from the West, as well as indigenous Arab comics playing in places like Jordan, Egypt, UAE, where you were, but Palestine, not as much. So, you know, just sort of tell us what that experience was like. What was it like to be in Palestine? And
it was wonderful. Yeah. So I'm sure the reason for that is because obviously there's a little bit more political turmoil in Palestine. So I went with a comedy, what was it called? Festivals. I went to a comedy festival. Amr Zahed led it, and he's Palestinian. So I think with like those kinds of shows, you need to have a local kind of guiding it. And there's a few other comics with me as well, but it was wonderful. I think we did 6 shows in the Ramallah, 1 show in Bethlehem, and 1 show in Jerusalem. And like I said, just the audiences, you know, their English was so refined, and I was able to talk about, very pop culture things. I know earlier I said I tried to go broad strokes, but I tested out the more topical, specific, some American cultural jokes, and they got it. They got everything. So I was very impressed with them. But yeah, just generally very optimistic, happy people. I had a wonderful time there. They're very open-minded. I do tend to appreciate more open-minded crowds. I'm a pretty clean comic. I'm not dirty by any sense, but sometimes I like to just like push the envelope just a little, just a dabble of the push, and see what they, if they're going to get mad at me or not. And they didn't get mad at me, so I love them. But yeah, we had quite a few sold out shows too. So it was just a very interesting experience, because I never thought I would be able to go to Palestine either. And to be there and just see the history and hear, the perspectives of the Palestinian people from the Palestinian people, not from a news channel, was very eye-opening.
Yeah, and I imagine also they must have been very thrilled to have you, because I think one of the issues a lot of Palestinians have if they're living in Palestine is that they feel almost cut off, especially from other Arab countries. And so there's this moment when they meet somebody who's been to another Arab country, they really want to ask you questions about that place, and really, because it's their way of connecting in a way.
Sure. I mean, most of the Palestinians I met, depending on if they're able to leave the country, because sometimes there's some red tape around that, but a lot of them I met were very well traveled. Like a lot of them were American citizens who also were able to go to Palestine. So it was a mixed bag, but yeah, they definitely are appreciative of people coming in, especially entertainers. So that was cool.
Excellent. And switching to the other country, do you hope to perform in Iraq someday? And if you could, what would it mean to you to do so?
Oh my God, that would be amazing. That would be a dream come true. I have a joke in my stand-up. I talk a little bit about going to Iraq and like seeing my uncles. And then, we had a conversation. They're like, Reem, you live in America, the land of opportunity. What is your dream? And I said, to be an actress. And he said, change your dream. And so which is a true conversation that happened. And so now my family is very proud of me, because, comedian is not really actor, but I'm still an actor. And it just, seeing how much success I've garnered, thankfully. And a lot of my fan base is in Iraq, like, looking at my social media demographic breakdowns, I think Iraq is like my second highest country after the US, which is really cool. I think it would be amazing to go perform there. I'd probably do a set in Araglish, which is English and Arabic, because, it's very difficult for me to do the Arabic set, but I just think it would really like hit home. There's not a lot of mainstream Western Iraqi performers. So, I hope a lot of what I do, sure, it's like for personal gain and I want to do this and that, but I really do want to be, one of the leaders or at the forefront of being an Iraqi-American entertainer, and hopefully bring pride to my people.
That's wonderful. I think that'd be lovely. But do you feel then, because if you just said there's not very many people in the public eye in America who are from Iraqi backgrounds, and obviously you are, does that come with a kind of special burden, do you feel?
I wouldn't say it's a burden. I just think it's something to be aware of, because there is a little bit more pressure or on me, whether it's from my direct family or whatnot, just to not fail, I want to say. And that, I don't mean that in terms of success, but, don't bring shame upon our people. It's just, you're in a very unique position, right? And I think I'm just uniquely aware of everything I do, has to have a purpose, or, everything I do has to align with what my brand, my message is. So it's not a burden. It's just something that I think twice about often. So yeah.
Yeah. And because obviously, whenever a country is in the news a lot, people in the country, if you're from that country that's in the news, in the US, for example, they always want to ask you about that country. So I'm wondering, I'd imagine if you were an Iraqi in America in 2004, 2005, Americans would ask you lots of questions about that. Mm-hmm. But I'm wondering now, do they actually ask those kind of questions anymore? Do they care about Iraq anymore?
Do they ask those questions anymore? The narrative has shifted away from like geopolitical stuff, and it's more towards religion now. So people used to ask me like, oh, like, being Iraqi or being, Middle Eastern, et cetera. Now it's more like being Muslim. So that's been a definite shift, as we've gone away from the war and things like that. Being Muslim, yeah, I get questions all the time. In fact, I do a lot of performances at universities like we were talking about. And sometimes I'll do a Q&A at the end. And, 80% of the questions are like, so how do your Muslim parents like deal with this? And like, what do your Muslim parents do? Oftentimes I'll go to parts of the US that are not that diverse. And I have been told that I'm the first Muslim person anyone's ever met, let alone seen perform stand-up. I've gotten questions at certain more conservative shows like, oh, so like, are you allowed to be doing stand-up like this right now? Like, are you rebelling by being up here speaking as a woman? I was like, what? So, part of that's my responsibility, kind of like what we were talking about with being Iraqi, being not necessarily a representative. I'm not a representative. I'm just an individual who happens to have these experiences. And I think it's necessary for me to talk about that as, in my stand-up or in my interviews, whatever, just so that people can learn more about like us and humanize us.
I mean, I don't think you would object to that if anyone wanted to make you an envoy of some kind and give you the money for the privilege.
Oh, am I the Muslim American on the Wheaties box? Yes, I am. That's all I am.
I mean, the Vatican has its own envoys throughout the world. Maybe you could be one too.
Sure.
So
If there's money involved, let's go.
So what are your like top comedic influences on you?
Well, I have a lot of different comedians that I admire, and I try to take little things here and there. But I think Russell Peters was my very first comedic influence. I was talking about this last night, actually. Just there weren't a lot of comedians that I could watch with my, Muslim family, because some of them were too dirty or this or that. And Russell, at least, his older stuff, it was just kind of like talking about being like a third culture kid and having, immigrant parents and ways to commenting on those lost in translation moments and stuff like that. I related with that growing up, and I was able to watch that with my parents, and it was amazing. And we all had those inside jokes together. And I think when I first started out comedy, that was a lot of the influence that I took to move forward. But I also really admire Dave Chappelle. I like Ali Wong, Joe Coy. I feel like most people that I mentioned, there's no white comics there. I do love white comics. I love them all. For me, I really relate to these stories about, having your identity here, and also like how that bleeds over into your normal life and influences your perspective and stuff. So those are my favorites.
Oh, that sounds nice. And so thinking now about the future, if we dare, what projects and things are you working on now, and what is coming up for you?
Sure. Well, I'm currently writing all the memes and jokes for the Tom and Jerry Twitter page, which is fun, and for Scooby-Doo, and for random people here and there, which I think is hilarious. If young Reem knew she'd be writing Tom and Jerry moving forward, she'd be very happy. Right now I'm pitching a television show around Hollywood. So I'm currently writing my own projects and putting them in the Hollywood machine, and hopefully one day one of them will get picked up, and then I can, have my own series, similar to how Rami has his own series. So that's really like what's next on my goals list on my manifestation board. So yeah, writing, developing, pitching, and then auditioning for shows here and there. So hopefully if my show takes off, then I'll just write myself into the show, and then, that's my way to act. But other than that, doing all these auditions.
Oh, that sounds interesting. So for you then, because obviously you've told us a little bit about where you've been, and you're telling us what you're planning to do, but where do you actually want to go? What do you want the future Reem to be?
Oh God, that's a really big question. I kind of touched on that. I would like to be, I do think I have a certain responsibility as a Muslim woman to push the narrative forward, and to inspire others along the way. I was having this conversation recently. I never knew I wanted to be a stand-up comedian growing up, because I didn't realize it was a real job, and I didn't realize it was something that a woman who looked like me could do. So with everything that I do, I hope to be, at the forefront, inspiring other people to do it along the way. So, there's not, like I said, there's not a lot of Muslim or Arab women who are doing stand-up comedy or in entertainment. Now there's much more than there was when I was starting out. But, I hope that whatever I do, TV, film, all of that, just allows other people to do the same, which sounds like such a cliche answer. And I feel like every time anyone's ever responded with that, I'm like, I'm sure, yeah. But it's the truth. I just, I mentor a lot of young comics. I always, my door's always open when people ever need advice and stuff. And I just think it's important to, as a group of people, be able to move forward and continue breaking those stereotypes and continue humanizing our experience. So that's my ultimate goal, and to be a millionaire. But like, those are just, those are the two.
I like how profound you go through, and then you have to end it with, and I also want to be rich.
I know, it's crazy. I'm like a comedian or something. It's really weird.
Well, Reem, it's been a great pleasure talking to you with Middle East Monitor Live. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we say goodbye to the audience?
Oh, no, thank you for the time. If you'd like to follow me on all the socials, all my handles, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, it's at Reem Edan, ReemEdan. And I'll see you online.
All right, and thank you for talking to us, and to our audience, I'd like to thank you for being here. Please do tune in next week for another Middle East Monitor Live conversations. And also remember, this will also go out as a podcast by the end of the week. So please do check that out.